Excuse me, sir. Could you tell me why all the birds are dying? We're very sorry, we don't know yet. We're working on it. This is the conversation that the Arkansas Police Call Center had time after time on that ghastly day, when the unsuspecting citizen woke up to find a graveyard of black birds in their neighborhood. The streets of Arkansas were covered by birds scattered on the ground. Blackbirds of all shapes and sizes made a feathery blanket over the roads. In people's gardens, on the pavement, mostly dead but often bleeding while struggling for their last breath, the tortured creatures apparently just fell from the sky. And no one knew why. Kentucky turned into a cradle for corpses of sparrows and other dark-feathered birds as well. In Louisiana, 500 birds fell to their death at the same time. Experts were at a loss for words. Was it atmospheric disturbance? Was there a threat in the air so fatal yet so subtle that only the birds could understand the warnings the planet was vibrating with? Was it some alien matter? Was it an act of cruelty? Were they all being poisoned because of someone's ghoulish agenda? Were they disturbed by previous fireworks, or was it all an incredible coincidence? No conclusion has ever been reached. The tortured birds fell to their death, whether pushed by some invisible force or inspired to suicide by some threat undetectable by humans. We will never know. The animals passed away and the events never reoccurred. All that's left are horrid images in the minds of all who awoke to a truly apocalyptic sight. One dreadful winter night in Langby, Minnesota, temperatures dropped 25 degrees Fahrenheit below zero. 19-year-old Jean Hillard was returning home and had a car accident in the winter nightmare. Her car skid off the road. She tried desperately to reach her neighbor, but the frozen night took her over and turned her into a human popsicle, literally. When her neighbor finally found her the next morning, she looked more like an ice statue than an actual person. Her skin was completely white, the frostbite turning her into a rendition of the Snow Queen. Her entire body was solidified by the cold, turned into ice, unable to bend or pierce. She was immediately transported to the hospital, but the doctors had no hopes of getting her back. Even if they did manage to melt her back to a normal human temperature, she would have certainly suffered from brain damage, and her skin would never come back to normal. The frost would forever leave its mark. She was wrapped in an electric heating pad, and her family and friends waited in distress to see if they would ever see another sign of life in their loved one. What no one expected, especially not the doctors, was that Jean would start to twitch in a couple of hours, to convulse her body and finally eventually open her eyes. About a month and a half later, to everyone's astonishment, Jean left the hospital as healthy as ever, with no sign of ever having been eaten up by ice and clinically dead. Her brain, her internal organs, her skin, untouched. How, you ask? Get in line. You're not the only one asking that question. Maybe it was a Christmas miracle. February 24th, 1942, Los Angeles. Sirens are voicing themselves, calling people to action. An object appeared in the sky. It was floating through the night, threatening those below. It's the Japanese attacking again. Some jumped to arms, some hid, some experienced a burst of adrenaline and were prepared to fend off the enemy at all costs. Others sadly couldn't handle the stress and experienced severe trauma. In extreme cases, even died of heart failure due to panic attack. The 37th Coast Artillery Brigade unloaded 1,400 12.8-pound anti-aircraft shells. The bombardment went on for a full hour. The object soaked up all that was shot at it. The missiles killed 4 civilians, but the aircraft loitered over the sky, moving with a hover over the state. It wasn't the Japanese. Well, who was it then? The government made no effort to come up with a plausible story, calling it a weather balloon. And even though most people aren't quite as gullible as the government would want them to be, the fact of the matter is that no one was offered, or managed to offer, any other answer to this day. In the winter of 1959, 9 people were found dead near the camp they had previously set up. High on a mountain at sub-zero temperatures, bodies were found scattered at the camping site, alongside ripped tents. 6 of the campers had died of hypothermia. 2 died of chest fractures inflicted by a force which doctors claim cannot be human. 1 woman was found with her tongue ripped out. The bodies were highly radioactive. The only footprints found in the snow were their own. No conducted investigation managed to explain how the people had died. What hunted them down in those woods remains a mystery. Some sort of force, one powerful enough to damage the human body to the breaking point, but which leaves no footprints or DNA, emerged from the freezing cold that night and took lives of unassuming campers. sounding like something from a horror movie. The mystery remains unsolved to this day. At around 7:17 a.m., in the hills northwest of Lake Baikal in Russia, the locals saw a blast of bluish light moving across the sky. The blast was as powerful as sunlight. About 10 minutes later, the air was rattled by a sound similar to artillery fire. The source of the sound moved from the east to the north of them. The sounds were accompanied by a shockwave that knocked people off their feet and broke windows hundreds of miles away. The shockwave was as heavy as an earthquake, destroying everything in its path, including ripping trees out of the soil. The turmoil was so great that it was detected as far away as Great Britain. Night skies in Asia and Europe were glowing for the next couple of days. This happened in 1908. Since then, scientists have written an estimated 1,000 scholarly papers on the event. Extensive research has been done in the area, but all we have is theories. Meteor, comet, alien attack, secret weapon testing. Each theory is as likely and unlikely as the other. The fact of the matter is, our planet was shaken up, and we don't know why or by what, or by whom. Most importantly, we have no idea whether something like this is to be expected again.